an informational night. This is hosted by the school committee. I know that Chairman Morse will talk a little bit about what tonight is. Our finance director, Nikki Gonzalez, will go over where we are financially as a district. You'll have the privilege of listening to me talk through 19 slides. I'll do the best to provide as much information as I can in a relatable way, because sometimes when you look at regional school district budgets, they are very complex. There's many pieces that go into it. You'll hear about minimum local contribution, above minimum contribution, transportation, circuit breaker, school choice. There's a lot of information that goes into a school budget. We'll talk about how we ended up where we are today and kind of where the school committee has to make a decision about where we go. And it's so important. And I know that there's a lot of emotions that come into play, as there should be, when there are things on the table, like reconfiguring schools or closing schools. We are all on the same team trying to make the best decisions for the district in terms of financial sustainability within our district, as well as the best educationally sound decisions that we can to put our students, who are our number one assets, in the best position to be successful as we move forward. So it is a lot. You will have time to answer questions. I know that Chairman Morse will talk about that time. We may run out of time before 8:30, and if we do, that's okay. We're willing to have more meetings. We'll meet with the boards from West Brookfield and from Warren, and we'll talk about exactly where we're at. Our goal is to be as transparent as possible. I know there's a lot of things that happen out on Facebook. I know there's things that this is a scare tactic, things like that. I can tell you with 100% certainty, I've been in this district for 15 years. This is not a scare tactic. This is a reality that we've been talking about, particularly in West Brookfield for the last, I don't know, since 2018. But for those of you who come to town meetings, I've been to every town meeting, we've been talking about the fact, and we'll talk about free cash, but if we continue down this way, I think Pam Griffin, for those of you who have attended it in the past, has outlined this in a very strategic way, but we'll get a little bit more into that. So we are at a very difficult position in time that there's going to have to be some difficult decisions that are made, but we want to make the decisions that are in the best interest of our kids and of our community. So I'm going to let Chairman Morse kick it off, and then Director of Finance Gonzalez will talk a little bit about the budget, and then I'll break it down into the way that I think a little bit, and hopefully that will allow me.
All right, thank you very much. I just want to start by thanking everyone for coming out this evening, giving us your very precious time, and kind of spending a little bit of time here tonight and what we're hoping to accomplish this evening. The budget process started months ago, and the school committee, especially the budget subcommittee, has been working carefully, responsibly, taking a lot of long hours throughout that time. The situation that we find ourselves in at this time did not happen suddenly, and it's not the result of
and that is what our financial budget is based off of. You can see the foundation enrollment for the district from FY 2007 to this current fiscal year has gone down about 500 students. District enrollment, however, this is the total number of students that attend the district, and that includes school choice students as well. Another piece to this is our funding that we receive from the state. As to date, you can see that we have, over the last 20 years, received roughly about just under about $1.75 million of increases over 20 years. However, we all know that costs have been increasing year over year, much higher than that. You can see here, the table here shows our 2026 cherry sheet estimate. Those are the numbers that our budget is based off of this year. So what that means is our Chapter 70, that's our money that comes from the state. This fiscal year, we're receiving $10,600,000. But this coming year, in the governor's budget, they are proposing that we're going to get $10,676,000. What that's saying is that our increase in our Chapter 70 is $76,000. I can tell you our healthcare increase alone is more than that. You can see that we also receive charter tuition reimbursement. That has decreased. We also, as a regional school, receive transportation. And you can see that number has gone up. Our number differs a little from what the state has. We also receive funding for school choice. So there's two pieces to school choice. We receive revenues from the students that come into the district, and we also send money out, that hits our Chapter 70 money, for the students that go out of district. We also, and you can see that in the second group where it says estimated charges. The school choice sending for this year is estimated at $653,000, and we also have to pay for students that are charter school as well. So it's a little hard to see, but you can see our net receipts are, our net receipts are roughly up $600,000, but the school choice sending tuition is an offset to our Chapter 70 funding. So what that means is we're saying we're going to receive $10,676,000, but that is going to be charged, our school choice sending tuition of $653,000 is going to be offset to that. It's a net number. So we're going to receive roughly a flat $10 million from the state. Something to note here, I'm going to go back here really quick. We are declining, but our enrollment is declining, but our Chapter 70 aid is going up relatively in small increments. We are in what's called a hold harmless state with the state, meaning that although our enrollment is declining, our Chapter 70 is declining, but it's not increasing in the rate that we need it to increase. Another contributing factor is town contributions. There's two pieces to town contribution. There's a required minimum contribution. It's a very complicated formula that the state calculates. But basically, this is what our towns are required to contribute to schools. Every town in the state has a certain number they have to contribute. They have to pay that amount by law, so they cannot not pay that amount. The other piece is the above required minimum contribution. This is the amount that the town is agreeing to pay, but it is above the minimum contribution. They do not have to pay that amount. And this also includes the assessment for transportation. So you can see in the first chart, the required minimum contribution, it's in millions. But you can see over the last almost 10 years that it's gone from about $2.5 million to coming in this FY27 that, West Brookfield is going to be over $4 million in a required contribution. West Brookfield's contribution went up $302,000, while Lawrence went up $142,000. The above minimum contributions, you can see that the towns have been supporting the schools by, giving an additional above that contribution. And you can see that this year, our total contribution above required is $1.3 million this year. Another contributing factor is flat or declining revenue. So as I just talked about Chapter 70, this group of revenues does not change in any version of our budget. So that's important to note that our Chapter 70 doesn't change, our transportation reimbursement doesn't change. We have some Medicaid reimbursement, investment income, our E&D. In any version that we talk about today, none of those things change. So what ends up happening is that the above minimum is the catch-all to balance that budget for us. Another piece that contributes to our budget is our student services, our out-of-district placements in particular. This year alone, we had 3 students that were placed out of district. Some were move-ins. When a student goes out of district, we not only pay for transportation, but we also pay for tuition and transportation. Sometimes this can be over $125,000 per student. We do get funds as a district. Every school district receives circuit breaker funds, so we are able to offset some of that to the budget, but these costs can be unexpected at times. Another contributing factor is transportation. So when students go out of district, a lot of times we have to pay for transportation as well. And not only that, our transportation for regular ed students went up 5%. Our transportation reimbursement is budgeted at 85% this year. Last year, for this year, we budgeted a little bit higher, so we now have a little bit of a deficit in that revenue, which accounts for some of the issues that are here. Other contributing factors is health insurance. Industry-wide, I know everybody is feeling this and seeing it. I saw an article this morning that was talking about small business owners and having to make choices about health insurance. We have a rising healthcare cost and a lower reimbursement, which is creating a revenue gap. So hospitals have to make up for the loss of Medicaid and Medicare, and we as insurers in the private sector are typically the ones that make this up. We also have specialty medications. So those are the ones you see on TV. So what they're doing is we have a low script volume of those. However, they're the highest cost medicines in the market today. So that contributes to health insurance. GLP-1 class medications have been soaring in popularity. I can tell you almost all insurances are restricting coverage of that. And that has an impact on this as well. The rising claim usage and the coverage for inflation is what causes rate increases, and retirees are living longer, which increase costs as well. Other contributing factors, for example, we pay Worcester County Retirement, the increase is just under 10%, so that's roughly about $68,000. Like everybody, utilities are going up, oil, electricity, we have solar. Solar credits, we used to get quite a bit here. They've now, since we've passed that date, so now we're looking at options to how we can get more credits to reduce our electricity. Costs are just increasing in general. As we all know, we go grocery shopping and, paper goods, cleaning products, technology, hardware, and services, or just moving from paper to electronic processes. Salary increases, staff retirement buyback. We have necessary repairs and maintenance that we need to do on the regular, or we're trying to get things caught up, or we're replacing aging items. Another factor into this budget is conserving what I call other funds usage. So that's school choice, it's circuit breaker, it's things like the special ed grants. So instead of taking all of that money and throwing it out the budget, we've dialed some of that back a little bit so that in case that we have an emergency or we need to cover something, we have those little pockets of cash. I'll tell you, this budget, there's no pockets of, rainy day funds. That's not here. Okay. So this is the first budget. This budget is a level service budget. What that means is this is a budget that takes everything we do today in this district and we just budget it. So it's with cost increase, all of that. So you can see What I have up here are the town's operating assessments. So when we look at this, the Warren minimum local contribution is $3.3 million. That's where an increase of $142,000. In this scenario, our total expenditures are $24 million, a little over $24 million. It's an increase of roughly 8% over last year's budget, or the budget we're in right now. But what the difference here is the above minimum contribution is going to be $2.5 million. So we have, not only do we have an expenditure issue, but we also now have a revenue. Because you can see your above minimum contributions, that's making up the difference in the budget where the revenues are not coming in. West Brookfield, you can see that their above minimum goes to $1 million, and you can also see transportation increase here as well. The numbers on the side that are in the blue are the numbers that aren't changing. So the minimum required contribution doesn't change in any budget. The above minimum contribution from this year of 1.3 doesn't change. And the state and other revenue stays at 12.25 million. This budget is restructuring the elementary schools. What that means is we would have West Brookfield have K through 3, and Warren would be 4 through 6. In this budget, a couple factors come into play. If you look at transportation numbers, they've now doubled. Transportation is reimbursable, but it's reimbursable in the next fiscal year. So in FY27, we will not see the savings of the increase of transportation. So transportation will go up roughly to $2.5 million. The above minimum for both towns does go down slightly. However, we're still at a $1.8 million above minimum contribution. You can see our expenditures have actually gone up a little bit here because, like I said, transportation has now increased. And Superintendent Duff will get into more of the detail about what this looks like. But with that transportation change, what happens is we've now increased our expenses a little bit. So we've decreased our above minimum in this scenario. However, transportation has gone up. This budget is closing West Brookfield. This budget, you can see transportation expense has now come down. You can see the above minimum contributions have come down as well, but it is still an above minimum of $872,000. You can see that our expenditures have now significantly gone down, and we are roughly about $100,000 over what the budget is for this year. So what does this all look like in comparison? So I put together, the first column is the FY26 approved budget. That's the budget that we're in today. The second column is the level funded budget. You can see that the total above minimum contribution here is $2.5 million. You can see our expenses have gone up from 22.2 to $24 million. You can also see that increase in transportation here. In the FY27 budget restructured the elementary school, you can see that we have lowered the above minimum contribution, but you can see that the transportation expense has increased significantly. You can also see, the other thing I haven't talked about is capital. So those are some projects that we have that were in Warren, and so Warren pays capital. That doesn't change either. And then in the last one, it is FY27 budget of closing West Brookfield. You can see now that we significantly decreased the above minimum contributions for the towns, and transportation has gone down slightly. And you can see the expenses have gone down almost $2 million. So what are the next steps? Next steps are today, we're having our district-wide meeting. school committee meeting on Monday, March 30th to vote a budget in. West Brookfield has a Prop 2.5 that I believe is scheduled in May. And then West Brookfield and Warren town meetings are in June.
That's a lot of information, those are a lot of numbers, yeah.
Yep.
A lot of information, a lot of numbers. I am not a microphone guy, so if you need to use a microphone, please let me know. But I typically don't use the microphone. They tell Josh, yeah, you're loud enough. That's what Josh told me. So I'm going to talk a little bit about where we're at, what this looks like, what types of impacts does it have. And first and foremost, I want to thank, obviously, the school committee. I can tell you that we've been meeting once or twice a month for the last 3 months. Quite frequently have a couple dinners together now because we're here so long. But for people who don't dedicate their time, this is a non-paying position that they're elected to do, and they're elected to represent the towns and our schools. So for each of the school committee members that are here tonight, I can't thank you enough for the support that you give to our students, and your jobs are very difficult. I want to thank the town representatives from West Brookfield and the town representatives from Warren. I know they're in the house as well. They come to some of our meetings, so it's usually, it's helpful to get input. If you have noticed over the last 3 years, for those of you who have attended school committee meetings, I can tell you 6 years ago when I walked into a town meeting, it was the school against the fire, against the police, against the town hall, the library service. It was always the school that was on the opposite side fighting for every penny. We have developed a positive relationship with each of our towns. In the last 3 years, we've gotten more money from our towns at above minimum contribution, thanks to the voters, but above minimum contribution than we have ever received before. And when we come into town meetings, there has not been one question, and I know some of the Finance Advisory Select Board look at me like, wow, I can't believe there wasn't a question. And I think it's because of the level of transparency and collaboration that we have developed over the last couple of years with our town representatives. So I want to thank them for that as well. So welcome to our QRSD School Committee Information Meeting. Oh, Nikki, can you, sorry, I can get that. My gosh, what do I do? Just push a button. All right, we're good. So our process, I know that Nikki and Greg talked a little bit about it. The school committee has been working diligently on this process since November. This meeting is not a result of poor planning, lack of effort, lack of support. The reality of it is, and we look at the enrollment numbers, unfortunately our enrollment is declining. And when you have a decline in enrollment and you have rising costs, then that creates a problem. As costs rise, then obviously, if we have a declining enrollment, we're going to have an issue. Also, temporary funding is becoming unavailable to us. I'll define what temporary funding is in just a minute, but there has been a lot of temporary funding that's been thrown at our operating budgets over the last, since I've been here, probably 10 years. So it's important to understand what that temporary funding is. All right. So our enrollment history. Nikki got into it a little bit more over a long period of time. I started in 2012. I can tell you that our enrollment from 2012 to where we are today has decreased or declined by over 325 students. Okay, and this has mainly been at the elementary buildings because of the school choice populations that we have at the high school. When we look at the elementary populations include school choice students. I can tell you that school choice has been a lifeline for this district. Year after year, we put $1 million, $1.2 million. This year, I want to say it's in the neighborhood of $900,000 towards the operating budget. So by taking kids in, which we get about $5,000 per kid, we're able to use those funds to help support the education that your children are receiving. Why enrollment matters? Our foundation budget is based on enrollment. This is my simplified version. Nikki's got a long formula. But essentially, we take our enrollment and we multiply it by our foundation rate. What this means is that state funding increases minimally, meaning in FY27, the state, our Chapter 70 money has increased by $76,000. If you look at what we received last year in the above minimum contribution, the amount that the towns were not required to give us, they gave us $1.3 million above what they were required to do. If we don't have that money going into this year, we walk out the door $1.3 million behind where we were last year. Now on top of that, we take increases. Health insurance is around $150,000. Salaries are $350,000. Utilities are up. Retirement buyback is up 70% this year. If you take all of these contributing factors and we take away those one-time funds that we'll discuss in a minute, it leaves us with a deficit of about $2.65 million above minimum contribution. So as revenue declines, expenses continue to increase. So how have we responded to this? I know that for those of you who have been in the district for a long time, you know that we have cut over 30 positions over the last 10 years. When I came to Warren Elementary School, we had 4 6th grade teachers, 4 kindergarten teachers, 4 teachers across the board. We're down to 2 teachers at every grade level. At West Brookfield Elementary School, it was probably 3 or 4 per grade level, around that. 2. All right, so we maintained at West Brookfield, we've been about 2 across grade levels. But what we've done is we've reduced teachers, and we've reduced administration. We had ELA coaches. We had math coaches. Our teachers are now taking on the responsibility of being a curriculum director, being an instructional coach, being an early intervention team member, because we just don't have the funds for the positions like other districts have. So these reductions have already taken place. But it makes me excited because our teachers are spectacular and our kids are spectacular. Despite reductions of our schools continue to excel. We're one of the top-ranked districts in Massachusetts. We're the highest-performing district among any of our neighboring districts. Ware, Palmer, Muncie, Quaboag, Kankaskia, Southbridge. We are the top-performing district, and we do it with very little. We're in the top 20% of districts nationally. This success reflects how hard our students work, how dedicated our teachers, paraprofessionals, speech are, our strong administrators, and most importantly, the supportive family and communities that we have, because our communities have supported education. And I'll argue that all day long. That partnership is our strength. Did you shut me off? Oh, I'm back. All right. Uh-oh. Oh, I'm hitting the wrong button. Sorry about that. This is why I don't have too many things going on at one time. The financial reality that we face. Education is about students, but it's also a financial system that has to be sustainable. You've heard lots and lots of conversations about North Brookfield. I stood in front of the staff, I stood in front of each town, and I said, North Brookfield is about sustainability. It's not about anything else except for maintaining what we have and decreasing the number of cuts that we have to get. We worked our tails off, and we will continue to work our tails off to try to get North Brookfield to come in, because number one, it's good for our towns, it's good for their kids, and it helps with our assessments. All right? But, like I said, it's also a financial system. Costs continue to increase: health insurance, retirement, salaries, utilities, transportation. If you look at version number 2, where you saw your transportation double, the reason it doubles is because you would have to go to a 3rd tier. And what a 3rd tier in transportation means is right now we have the middle high school and we have our elementary roads. We can't be at West Brookfield Elementary for K-3 and in Warren for 4 to 6 at the same time. You'd be on the bus for more than an hour. So you have to add a 3rd tier, which brings in a conversation with the union about different start times, which honestly I'm not a huge fan of. I like keeping the schools open as much as possible. But if you had an 8 o'clock start time in one building for K-3 and a 9 o'clock start time in another building for 4 to 6, that creates some difficulty for families. On top of that, the reason the transportation doubles is if we were to try to run it all at one tier, every bus would cost an additional $140,000 because they have to add those buses to their fleets. So the most economical way to do it is by adding another tier. The problem with adding another tier, and Nikki touched base on it, is when you add additional transportation to your current FY27 budget, you don't realize the savings on that until FY28. So that cost for transportation gets passed directly to the towns and the taxpayers in the year that we're actually living in, which is the FY27 year. Special education, I know Nikki touched base on that. Special education services, we had a few students that moved into our district. If a student moves into our district with an out-of-district placement, and what an out-of-district placement means is that the student, we can't provide the educational services within our school system that they require to be placed in a specialized school. We had 3 students that moved in. On average, it's $100,000 per tuition per student. That's $300,000. If you're lucky, it's $50,000 for transportation per student. There's another $150,000. 3 students move in, tuition, transportation, $450,000 that the district has to pay for those students to go out of district. Now, we do get circuit breaker. Where's my friend, Dr. Esposito? Oh, there you are. Circuit breaker reimbursement. What is circuit breaker reimbursement rate right now?
For return, 75%, but 4 times the per pupil.
Could you break that down into my terminology, like a little more basic?
So you have a certain amount that the state will give you for each student. You have to spend 4 times that in district, and anything above, the state will reimburse you 75%. So you are essentially only getting 75% on top of what you're obligated to spend for the district.
Yeah, so normally anything over $50,000, so something $75,000, for the first $50,000, it's the responsibility of the district. And then that additional, I'm simplifying, the additional $25,000, you get 75 cents?
75 cents.
75 cents on the dollar back. The reason I say that is circuit breaker is very much like transportation. When you send a student out of district, you don't get that circuit breaker funding until the following year. So that's how it gets complicated. So when a student moves into our district and we place a student out of district because we can't service them, that cost comes directly out of the operating budget. Dr. Esposito has been instrumental, as have our staff, in starting programs. We're able to service our students that typically we would send out of district 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. We have those students staying in our district, which I would argue is best for our kids because kids belong in their school communities. So Dr. Esposito, a shout out to you on that, and to our staff for doing a great job. The problem is the revenue from the state has not kept pace. You look at $76,000. I'm going to tell you it's a drop in the bucket compared to what our increases are. It's not right. So one-time funds have been used to stabilize the budget. You'll hear about ESSER funding, you'll hear about ARPA funding, you'll hear about COVID funding, you'll hear about school choice revenue and free cash. I'll argue there's nothing free about cash, right? Free cash is like E&D, which is excess and deficiencies. It's your revenues minus your expenses and what you carry into the next year. Our towns, and particularly in West Brookfield, that Warren has done a lot with their free cash, our town in West Brookfield has been standing up at town meeting for the last 5 years saying, this is a dangerous road to go down, because when you use your savings account to pay your bills, when it comes time to pay your bills again, you don't have the revenue coming in, and you don't have the savings there, then you run into a really big problem. Right now, I think that as our conversations have happened, I think that we are having a free cash problem right now in West Brookfield, which is unfortunate. But I think that they've done a pretty good job over the years articulating that one day we may end up here, and unfortunately, we might be here at this point. So these funds are like a savings account. Once the savings are used, they no longer exist. So it's hard to use the money that you don't have in the bank to offset your operating budget if the money's not there. If the revenue that you're bringing in from your tax rates isn't enough to cover your bills and you don't have money in the bank, then you have some really, really difficult conversations to have. I know I saw Chief Hagman over there. He has to cut budgets. The school has to cut budgets. Fire has to cut budgets. It's not easy on anybody, but it's a reality, unfortunately. So required minimum local contribution, Nikki said it's essentially the town's ability to pay. West Brookfield makes up 40% of Quaboag. Warren makes up 60% of Quaboag. West Brookfield pays about $1 million more than Warren does to educate our students in our district because West Brookfield's ability to pay, looking at median incomes and things like that, is greater than Warren's ability to pay. So when you have an increase of $302,000 and Warren only has an increase of $146,000, it's based upon the town's ability to pay. The problem is, when we're having conversations with Town Administrator Kofsky, when we were looking at it, your required contribution this year, minimum contribution, went up by $302,000. That's a huge chunk of change. In addition, the transportation increase is approximately $200,000, so your total increase is $502,000. I rounded it to $500 just to keep it even. All right, the budget gap, when we were talking at our initial budget meetings with the town of West Brookfield, it was said that there was a 5% increase as reported at our initial meeting. In this case, if you take last year's assessment and you multiply that by 5%, you get $232,000. If your minimum local contribution goes up by $302,000, regardless of that 5% that you've already budgeted, we're already over budget by the difference of $232 and $302. The local required contribution plus transportation, we need to get our kids back and forth to school, is $500,000. If you take the budgeted $232 and you look at the difference between transportation and the local contribution, there's a difference of a shortfall of $268,000. That's just to get to the minimum required contribution, nothing on top of it, which makes it very difficult, especially, when we're looking at a level service budget, don't cut anybody. We're at $2.65 million. We're worried about getting to the local minimum contribution, which makes these decisions even more difficult. So the community support has been extraordinary. Our towns have consistently, you have consistently prioritized the education for our kids in our town. That's why when I got the news that we were number 10 in Worcester County, and I think that half the school committee heard me get out of my car and went, yeah, number 10, because I was so excited for our kids and for our staff. That's because you guys have made this a priority. Warren and West Brookfield last year contributed $1.3 million above minimum contribution. West Brookfield was $530,000 above minimum contribution. Warren was $780,000 above minimum contribution. We are, as a school community and as a staff and as students, extremely grateful for your generosity. All right, but the current challenge, West Brookfield is facing a significant financial constraint. The issue is free cash has been used extensively over the last several years to help fund operating budgets. So if I have $100,000 in the bank and I spend $50 one year on police, fire, schools, I only have $50 left the next year. If I use that $50 again the following year, then I don't have that money left anymore to put it towards our operating budgets. And that's the problem that we're running into, particularly with West Brookfield. Those funds are extremely limited. So what it means is the $530,000 that West Brookfield gave to the school district last year may not be available this year, and likely isn't. So additional funding to maintain the current structure may not be available. So that's why we have versions 1, 2, and 3, because the school committee has worked with the towns, and the school committee has given Director Finance Gonzalez and I the task of saying, how is it possible to get here? I've been in the district for 15 years. I've seen so many people come and go, which is so unfortunate. I know what it takes to get there, and it's not pleasant. It's nothing that I would ever want to put forward, but it's what the school committee has asked us to do. All right, so educational considerations. considerations. Over the past 3 years, and for those of you who have been here for the past 3 years, we started a brand new ELA curriculum, Wonders curriculum in the elementary buildings. This year, we started an Envisions program in our elementary and 7th and 8th grade. We have innovative status, which is a fancy way for the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to tell the school committee that we can pick whatever curriculum we want to pick because we have innovation status, which is out the window. But what it did is it created a gap in learning with our 2 elementary buildings. For a long time, we had Eureka and Warren, and we had Go Math, Eureka's math program, and Go Math and Warren. We had 2 separate math programs for kids that were in kindergarten through 6th grade. That makes a lot of sense when kids are coming to 7th grade learning 2 different curriculums. So our teachers stood up and they said, we need to have the same curriculum in each of our buildings. Thank you guys for doing that. So they took on a new ELA curriculum 3 years ago and a new math curriculum this year. So now we have an aligned math curriculum, aligned reading curriculum, and we've supported our teachers by hiring an instructional math coach through grant funding to help them learn how to implement the new curriculum. We use grant funding as much as we can to help support our teachers. The challenge is teachers are spread across 2 different buildings, and this makes collaboration difficult to do. So having grade level teachers in the same building improves common planning, curriculum alignment, instructional consistency, intervention coordination, academic expectations, most importantly, student outcomes. And the important part of this is it's not just financial, it may be what's best educationally for our kids. And we've had that in conversations as staff when we kind of looked at the reconfiguring model. All right, our current elementary configuration, we have 71 kids. This is grade kindergarten, 71, 56, 65, 68, 97, 86, 91. On the right-hand side, you see what the class sizes are. If we were to reconfigure or school closure, class sizes are going to go up. You can't get to where we need to get to without having reductions in staff, unfortunately. So your class sizes would vary anywhere from 21 to 28 to 1.
How many staff per room with these new numbers?
I will go over that. That's not information that those are what the numbers are for the ratios. Okay? Title I. We are Title I district wide. Billy's a math teacher. She's doing the math over here. I see her. We are Title I district-wide right now. Title I funding is based upon the economic status or the poverty level within your school districts. Warren Elementary was a Title I school. We call it targeted interventions because there was a higher level of poverty in Warren. Next year's number for Title I is in the neighborhood of $297,000, which I'm going to round up to $300,000 for you, Director of Finance, and others. But it's $300,000. West Brookfield gets a very small portion of that because when you look at your ability to pay, West Brookfield's ability to pay is greater than Warren's because you look at the median income of families. So a majority of Title I funds right now go to Warren Elementary and then it trickles up to Quaboag because Quaboag has students from both kids, and at the end of the day, all the Warren kids and all the West Brookfield kids end up at Quaboag. If we restructure, and this is where Title I funding really comes into play, we would go back to a targeted school, which means all the money would go to one elementary school. With all the money going to that one elementary school, it would allow us to add some additional staffing for intervention blocks. I'm sure you've all heard the WIN block, What I Need Now block. Those are run by interventionists. You can have more targeted support and more student services put into place through Title I funding. That's the upside of closing, of making one school where you can use all the funds in that school. Educational benefits of reconfiguring or closing. The benefits are you have better student groupings, you have more effective interventions, stronger teacher collaboration, improved curriculum consistency, greater access to instructional coaching, and more efficient use of staff. I would argue if you have kids that do dance, theater, sports, that they get to be together a little bit more, regardless of where it's at, but I think that's an important component that we have to factor into it. All right, our responsibility as leaders, we want to protect educational quality. That's our number one goal at all times. The last thing we want to do is put our kids in a situation that isn't advantageous to them. We want to maintain fiscal responsibility. We want to work with our towns so that whatever it is that we decide to do is sustainable, so that we're not back here in 2 years saying, okay, well, we put a Band-Aid on it because we've been putting Band-Aids on things by using free cash for a very long period of time. We can't continue to put Band-Aids on things because we always end up with very difficult decisions at the end. Plan for long-term sustainability. We want to support our students and staff, and we want to respect our taxpayers and your assessments. We need to work on this together as a community, and those are choices that you kind of have to make. So the decision ahead, your possible options, we can reconfigure schools, K-3. There's a huge transportation cost to that, some stuff that we have to go through with the union, and then working out some logistics. We can close a school. We can maintain the current structure with significant reductions. So I can tell you the reductions that we made to get to 1.7 million above minimum contribution aren't good reductions. There's no such thing as a good reduction, but if we maintain the current structure, we're going to have some very, very serious things that are going to impact some of our core classes, unfortunately. We just don't have a choice. That's the hard part. I can tell you that there's no perfect solution. I think that we have to come up with a solution, or the school committee has to come up with a solution that's going to give our students the opportunity to continue being as successful as they have been, while trying to support everybody. So our commitment will always put students first. I think you know that. We'll support our staffs. We will work collaboratively as school committee and superintendent and finance director and all the administrators. We're going to work collaboratively with our towns because, as we've seen in the last 3 years, collaboration is huge. Nobody wants to be where we are tonight. I can promise you that. I can promise you that West Brookfield town officials and the Warren town officials don't want to be in this position, but here we are. We're going to communicate transparently. We have nothing to hide. This is really where we're at. And last but not least, we're going to make responsible decisions that are both educationally and financially sound. Are you hoping I hit the wrong button? Oh, that's it. So that was a lot. We're going to open it up to questions. Well, Chairman of the School Committee, Morse, it's yours now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Duff and Ms. Halls, for that very educational presentation, a lot of information, actually, some questions, and hope to have some additional questions or perhaps some feedback. We're going to enter into the public hearing period. I just asked so we can be respectful of everybody having an opportunity to speak. If there is another question or comments, 2 to 3 minutes. You can step up to the center of the mic, just introduce yourself, state which town you're from, and Mr. Schreiber will do timekeepers. Any questions for Mr. Duff or Ms. Halls?
Go ahead.
So I'm Stephanie, I'm from West Brookfield. I've had 2 children in West Brookfield. My question is, what happens to all the wonderful teachers if we have to close West Brookfield? That's my question.
Thank you.
I don't know what it was. Steph, what was the question?
What happens to all the wonderful teachers if we have to close the school?
Yeah. So the question is, what happens to all the wonderful teachers? There is a process that we follow. That doesn't mean that all the wonderful teachers in West Brookfield are no longer the wonderful teachers that will be part of our district. The important part is there are going to be many teachers from West Brookfield, if we close the school, that are going to continue to educate your students. There is a process that we do have to follow. Is it going to require cuts? I am going to tell you it is going to require cuts. You don't get to where we are without having cuts. On the flip side of that, I can tell you that the class sizes will be within, you guys saw it on the board, once again, complete transparency, within exceptional range. We're not going over 30 in classrooms. I think the highest one was 28, and there might have been 1 in a classroom. But all the wonderful teachers will not all be gone. We have, the best part about this district is we are like a family because I tell you, over 50% of the people that work at Quaboag either went to school at Quaboag or live in our community. So we take very good care of our people, but unfortunately there will be some tough decisions. Yeah, and I agree with you, Steph. It's the worst part of the job.
It sucks.
It does. It does suck.
Hi.
Hi.
My name's Nicole. I have 2 kids in the district. What if we go with option 3? How are we going to fit all these kids in Warren?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I understand that we have a little bit of room right now, but we don't have enough to house. I have a son who was in a classroom that had 30 kids, and it was rough. It was rough on the teachers. They had to use doorbells to make it quiet, and that was 6th grade. I can't imagine that in 5th grade or 4th grade. So really cramming them all into one school, is that even an option? Are we going to shift grades? Or is 6th grade going to go up to the middle school?
So I'll answer that question. 6th grade would not move up to the middle school at this point. I can tell you when I started at Warren Elementary School, we had, this is one of the most important things that you hear. When I started principal at Warren Elementary School, we had 515 students in Warren Elementary School. Between our 2 elementary schools right now, we have 470 kids.
Is that the numbers on the screen said? Because I thought it was equaling.
No, the total was 470. We have less kids now, district-wide, than we did at Warren Elementary School back in 2014. Can they fit? They can fit. Right now we have 28 classrooms at Warren Elementary. We have 22 at Lethbridge, or somewhere in that. So we've looked at all the maps. It does fit, and there is room for all the students and all the specials and the special ed teachers and Title I.
Your 4th grade ratio said 19 to 1. My son's classroom right now, I'm pretty sure has either 21 or 22, and I think all of them so.
So once again, I want to be very careful about this. In some grade levels, for example, there are a certain number of students that we can put in a grade level, and if it's projected, I'm going to just use a projection. We're looking at 32 kids in a grade level. That means a 16 to 1 ratio. If those 32 don't show up and I have 26 kids in a grade level, it becomes a 13 to 1 ratio. So when you look at combining grades, you can have a very low amount in one school and a moderate amount in another, and it still keeps that teacher-to-staff ratio down. It's really a piece about the numbers and the way that the numbers add up. It's not terrific, but in some ways, putting the teachers together is a positive way to do it. So yes, your numbers can go down even though you combine the students. That happens in one of those grade levels.
Hi, I'm Angela here, the administrative assistant at Westbrook Elementary. I've been there for about 22 years now. And, like Steve said, we've done this year after year. There's been all the warnings of the schools shutting down. We talked about this many times. Westbrook Elementary right now has 249 students. And Warren, I think, has 285. So that's like 520, I think, for kids if you're including all the school choice like everybody.
So I just want to point out very quickly. 6th grade has how many students?
In my school, 41.
Yeah, 50 something. So 6th grade goes up to 7th grade. That's why these numbers are projected on next year, not this
For
year.
next year.
6th grade is a huge class.
I feel like maybe I missed a part of the slide. So in the idea of reconstructing the schools, reconfiguring the students going to each building, K to 3 at West Brookfield, 4, 5, and 6 at Warren Elementary School. I understand the cost of transportation is going to go up. We're going to go to a tier 3. We also would seek some reimbursement that would increase from that. But how are we saving? How is that going to save the school? How by still keeping the school open and just putting Warren kids in there, is that Warren's going to be supplementing all of the money that West Brookfield is not because we're going to have their students in there? I don't understand. I didn't see that part on the slide where it said, and so if we're going to be combining all the kids, you're talking about cutting a teacher across the board every grade level by making the classes bigger. Obviously, that's where you're going to save on money there. But how is that Warren's contribution for their portion of kids going to keep that school alive if West Brookfield isn't able to keep up their part of the budget? Was that in the slide that I missed, or is that?
No, you didn't miss that
Okay.
slide. No, you didn't. And that would come back to the regional agreement and conversations that you have to have around it. But yes, you're absolutely right. The savings, regardless of whether you're in version 2 or version 3, the savings come from reductions across the board in staff. It's not just at the elementary levels, just so we're very clear about that. And it's not just teaching staff, it's across the board. Transportation does cost more the first year with the third tier that you add, but it's cheaper than keeping it at 2 tiers and adding additional buses. So for example, McCarthy has 4 buses at West Brookfield. If we were to do K through 3 at 815 in West Brookfield and K 4 through 6 in Warren, you would have to add 4 additional buses, which is $560,000.
And just, I mean, in light of being West Brookfield and loving my school and my community, the numbers that we saw with the reduction had to do with preschool leaving the school. So we used to have preschool, we used to house preschool at my school, and they came up here, so that was an automatic drop of 40 plus kids around 2018, I think. So there's where some numbers went down, and over the past few years, West Brookfield Elementary School has gone up in population. We have increased 25 kids at least over the past few years. So the numbers are getting there. I understand the finances aren't, but there's a lot of people who want to be in our school, a lot of families who love it, and the kids make up a great portion of it. So I really hope that we can figure out a solution to keep our school. We're looking at doing the playground, we're talking about all these things, and constantly planning for the future. We're constantly working on what we can do better and what we can keep going for our kids. And the idea of just closing it down, who's going to maintain the fields? What's going to be like? Now you're going to have sports games there, you're going to have people going to a school, school's dead and closed. You know, like, it's just not what the town of West Brookfield is about. So I hope that, I mean, reconfiguring. All right, we're a district, we merged in 7th grade anyways. We've been working at merging the kids in 6th grade, doing things together. I get all that. But even that, so that's a long bus ride. You're talking West Warren, coming all the way through and trying to, bus those kids. We talked about the difference from North Brookfield to busing, or when our school choice kids are coming from Southbridge. So that's a long bus ride you're putting those kids on. That's unstructured, unvaluable time of the day. Some kids get car sick, kids get bored, they lose a lot of valuable time that they could have if they were at home or socializing or part of a play group of some sort. So those are all things to take into account.
Hi, I'm Katie Egan. I work at WCES and I'm also a parent of a 4th grader. I have a couple of equity issues to bring up. I wonder if we're going to send our younger students to West Brookfield in the combined option 2 there. We already have families struggling with transportation issues. We in Warren have a significantly lower per capita income than West Brookfield does. I think that's going to create more of a hardship for Warren families who are stressed. If we have everybody come together at the elementary school, K through 6, and in that building, I hear you, Steve, when you say it used to be much bigger. I believe that. I see some empty spaces, but I also see the cafeteria going in there. We've got 3 4th grade classes that take up over half of the cafeteria already. If you're adding in another, you can't get another grade in there. How are you going to get through kindergarten through 6th grade lunches? Never mind recess and everything else that has to happen for that. But
So, once again, these aren't easy decisions. I want to be very upfront and honest about that. There's a 21st century room that is at Warren Elementary School. To the right-hand side is their after-school program. It makes up about a third of the cafeteria. That room, cafeteria, was an entire cafeteria at one time. And you can fit 3 grade levels in the cafeteria. It does take some restructuring, but I can tell you that we have done that in the past. And once again, these are not easy decisions, and we're here to discuss these decisions, but we've looked at every possible opportunity that we possibly have. So you can't fit the kids in the cafeteria, and how cafeteria is sometimes, because we've discussed it, but you can't fit all the kids in the cafeteria. And you can maintain the same lunch schedule they have, if not consolidate it.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
3 children in the district, 2 at West Brookfield Elementary School and 1 at the middle high school. I remember a few years ago when this was brought up, that somebody had made a comment, and I hope somebody can clarify, that in the regional agreement, it said something on the lines of West Brookfield shall have an elementary school in the town they reside in, and vice versa for Warren. So I'm just looking for someone to comment or clarify on that.
Yes, it does say that under Articles 1, 2, and 3. Underneath that is a paragraph that says, however, if it comes to the point where we are going to make changes, then it requires a 3/4 vote by the school committee, which is 8 out of, I'm sorry, I did this the other day, 8 out of 12. I said, oh, it was Mr. Burgess. I told him that was 67%. 9 out of 12 of the school committee members need to vote in favor of it. And 4 out of those 9 have to be representatives from the town of West Brookfield. And then that change can be made. To close it, correct. Yep. 4 out of the 6 of West Brookfield need to vote in favor. And then 9 out of 12 of the school committee members have to vote in favor.
Just the school committee doesn't.
Just the school committee, not the towns, just the school committee. Yep, that's part of the regional agreement.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, my name's Jed Disbrow. I have 4 kids in the school district, 3 in West Brookfield and 1 here. I have a bunch of questions. There's 3-minute time cap, so I'm going to be quick. You had asked about student-teacher ratio. I didn't hear an answer to that on option 3. You said you'd get to it. You never got to it.
Oh, I put it up, but that's okay. It's anywhere from 21 to 28.
No, what does that do to student-teacher ratio?
So it's the one
You're
teacher.
telling
to the
us what's
28.
going to happen in the class count. What happens to the student-teacher
Yep,
ratio?
so right now it's anywhere from 18 to 1 and 28 to 1 right now. In a reconfiguring or a closing the school, it would be a 21 to 1 to a 28 to 1.
Okay.
Those are the ratios, those are rough.
All right. I bought a house in West Brookfield about 4 years ago, 3 doors down from West Brookfield Elementary, so I can walk my kids to school. If you guys close that school, forget what it's going to do to my property value. This seems to all be presented like line items and budgeting, and I get that that's what it boils down to, but we're talking about kids here and the way they're brought up. They're not line items on a budget. You know, I didn't buy a house in Warren because I wanted my kids to go to West Brookfield School. I don't know, it bothers me that closing it's even on the table. It bothers me that you went over repeatedly, it seems like the crux of the problem is a decrease in student enrollment. And we have all these plans on how to fix the budget based on the decrease in student enrollment. What's the plan to increase student enrollment? Because if there's no plan to increase student enrollment, in another 5 years, are we going to be doing the same thing here again? If you're not bringing kids back in the district, your budget's not going up. Did closing the library at West Brookfield Elementary School, is that bringing families with young kids to the town? Because I wouldn't have bought a house here had I known my little kids weren't going to get library. That, to me, that's a failure. That's ridiculous. And I'm hearing ways we're going to save money and we're going to cut costs. I'm not hearing how you guys are going to turn this around. I'm hearing a temporary Band-Aid. I'm hearing you guys, it's not your fault. However, you relied on all these temporary funds that are now gone and we can't. I'm hearing that communication between multiple schools is difficult. I'm pretty sure every parent in here has kids who went through COVID. Like, we have video conferencing now. Teachers can talk without being in the same room. Doesn't cost a whole lot. I'm not hearing any solutions other than cuts. That's unacceptable.
Sure.
As a
So,
As a West Brookfield parent and a taxpayer and a voter,
Yep.
closing that school is unacceptable.
Yep. So what I will say is that is enrollment an issue? It absolutely is. Is the tax base an issue? It absolutely is. There is not enough revenue to cover the taxes. So the school district asks for above minimum contribution, and the towns are the ones that are responsible for voting that above minimum contribution. And the towns have done a great job of it. What have we done to increase enrollment? How many kids are in West Brookfield right now, Ms. Ruthier? 249. 60 of those 249 students are school choice kids. What have we done to increase student enrollment? If you look at Quaboag, if you look at the enrollment decline in the district, and you look at the number of students that continue to attend Quaboag, kids are coming to Quaboag because we have an awesome, excellent educational system. 60 kids in West Brookfield, and if any are in special ed, it's a little bit more money on top of that because you get special education increments. The district has actively gone out, sought, posted for, accepted 60 kids into West Brookfield that has brought in $300,000 of revenue that is used to offset this. We've started programs at the middle high school. We have a CNA program. We have a phlebotomy program. We have a fire academy. We have an early childhood education program. We've started these programs to keep kids in district. The number of kids, when you look at the school choice number, how it's gone down and our revenue has gone up, it's because we are ahead of other districts trying to start programs not only to keep our kids in district, but also to recruit kids to our district, because at the end of the day, those school choice increments are filling slots. You said like a 14-to-1, 15-to-1 ratio. If I can make that a 20-to-1 ratio with 5 school choice kids, that's an additional $25,000 that we can use to offset the operating budget. So I would argue that we are doing everything we possibly can to help offset these numbers. We're doing everything we can with enrollment. If you look at enrollment, 250, 60 of them being school choice, that's almost 25% of your population. Right? So we are doing everything we can, I would argue, in the school's perspective, to try to bring in additional revenue to help offset our problem that we have. And this isn't uncommon with many districts, but I can tell you that there are so many districts, unfortunately, that are in the same position we are right now. And it's heartbreaking. Nobody wants that. Last thing I want to do is close the school. I go to West Brookfield Elementary 2-3 times a week. I go to Warren Elementary 2-3 times a week. I live in the communities that we live in, that our kids go with. That's the last thing that I want to have happen. However, it's not my decision. This is a school committee decision. It's our responsibility to tell you where we are at in ways that we can potentially get to where we need to be.
If we brought in North Brookfield,
Yep.
does that solve the problem or
It
create a
helps.
new one by adding busing?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't, if we brought in North Brookfield, and this isn't going to be a this year conversation, but if we had brought in North Brookfield would have been responsible to pay for their transportation, but we would have charged a greater amount, and I'm just going to throw a number, say it's $10,000. We would have gotten that above the school choice number. I can tell you the problem with school choice is it started at $5,000. Cammie, can you help me? How many years ago was school choice?
At least 20.
20 years ago, we got $5,000 per student to come to our district. 20 years ahead, we're getting $5,000 per kid. It hasn't changed in 20 years. So I had a meeting with Senator Durant, Senator Oliveira, Todd, Representative Smola, Representative Berthium in April to discuss these very things, because districts shouldn't be keeping the money that they get from their foundation budget and just giving the district that's educating the kid or the student $5,000. So that are things that we're working on.
So on the note of what's the plan, how do the parents that are opposed to the schools closing, how do we help? Like, is there a representative we should be calling to
Yeah.
push for increase?
Absolutely. And I'll send out a form letter that you can send to Representative Berthium and Senator Durant for West Brookfield. We work very closely with both sets of individuals. Sorry.
Can I just interrupt for 1 second? Please, if you have a repeat question or another question, please wait till everyone has a chance to ask a question first. That we appreciate that first and everybody. Thank you.
Hi, Kirsten Lund here. I have 2 young kids in West Brookfield Elementary School. My question is, if we keep the school open, how will it affect the kids' sports fields in special classes? Will there be more cuts to after-school activities, music class, art class?
You had to ask that question, didn't you? So I am a big believer that sports, music, art, theater, band are as critical of a component as some of our core academic classes. That is my personal belief. So when I sat down with Director of Finance Gonzalez, right now we don't touch that. If we get to a point where we have to start, I'm not a fan of putting those things on the table as, well, if you don't vote for this, then we're going to lose this. Those are way too important to our kids to cut those things. I know that we've cut it in the past. I wasn't here when it got cut, thankfully. But I don't put that on the table. That's not a bargain. Okay, sports, were your questions? I'm sorry, what were the other?
Sports field, soccer field, maintaining that.
Maintaining. So once again, if we were to close a building, then that building gets returned to the town. But I think that, I know, once again, I know a lot of the players that are in here that participate in the sports and the soccer and the baseball. We're still a community, regardless of where we are. I think those things are something that we have to work with the town to make sure that goes well. We wouldn't want, like I said, last thing we want to do is close the school. We don't want to take away from those opportunities for our kids.
Hi, my name is Craig. Apologize in advance for being entirely self-serving. We school choice here. I'm just wondering, thanks for that, by the way. It's a lot better than the option I have, which I'm not here to talk about. So I did want to know, of the 3 options, is there any option in which kids that are already school choice here could potentially lose placement that they already have?
So the way that school choice operates is the minute that you're accepted into a district, that is your home. So if a building closes, you still belong to our district. Great.
I'm Madeline Smola. I'm from Warren Elementary. Both my kids went through the system and graduated from Quaboag. I also am an administrator here at Quaboag. And we've said many things, many slides, and a couple of things that were said, I just want to put them next to each other, to repeat them so they're next to each other. So one thing that I do is I do the school attending children report every year, and that's the report to the state that's based on our student information management system. So it's numbers that they have, but they want them put together in a specific report, and that goes in the security portal. And when I was doing the numbers this year, we talk about enrollment going down, we're talking about foundation enrollment, your resident students going down, although our school choice students have continued to go up. So that enrollment going down looks like, and I did not memorize the numbers, but 2 stood out to me. There are 2 grades right now, and I love West Brookfield Elementary just as much as I love Warren Elementary. There's 2 grades that have 20 residents in them. So the reason why we have more than 1 classroom right now in those grades is because of school choice students. And in terms of finances, we get, as Mr. Duff clearly stated, $5,000, the same amount we got 20 years ago per student. But per enrollment, for a resident student, how much is it, Cammie? Does anyone know? Is it $16,000 per student? And as we know, that's your foundation enrollment. It costs more to educate a student than $16,000 a year, but that's what we get from the state. Those numbers aren't going to change. Even if we contact our legislators, and I know because I'm married to one, that can't change for next year or even 2 years or probably 3 years. That formula, which is as long as probably this auditorium, has a lot of different factors to it, and they changed it a few years ago. They do want to change the formula again because so many schools have lower enrollment and are suffering, particularly schools in places like Warren or West Brookfield. I bring in a lot of the grant funding, And when we talk about those one-time funds that we used, we're not talking about the grant funding. We were talking about ESSER COVID money that was used over many, many years to lower our budget. Other schools hired staff with that. They did stuff for COVID. They did new programs. We didn't do that. We kept our staff and we lowered the ask to towns. Those one-time funds that we're talking about is that free cash that towns hold and build up. And one of our towns has depleted that to the point and explained it very clearly to us that the money is not there. So we can call our legislators, we can stand up and talk in this meeting, but the bottom line is the town's ability to pay, not the ability to pay that the state says they have, right? That's the minimum contribution, which our towns have struggled in the past to make. It is the true ability to pay that the town has. What money do they have and how much money could they get? And that is going to be the decision of the town and the decision of your finance board. So the town coming together with their finance people and coming up with that money. It's not something that the school district or grant or any of us can change. We can't change the enrollment. Our enrollment numbers, we could get 200 kids in the next 2 months. It will not change the money for tomorrow. The money that we're getting next year is based on October 2025 numbers. Matter of fact, it's October 1st. If a kid comes in after October 1st, we don't get money for that kid, right? It's October 1st numbers. It gets directly sent up into security portals to DESE, and that's how they decide how much money we're going to get. So even if we went out and we're with our incredible programs that we keep adding new programs each year to bring school choice in, and it's working, kids are coming in, but our in-resident enrollment is what has been dropping. And the cuts that we're talking about when we're talking about combining grade levels in different schools, we're not talking about just cutting staff at the elementary schools. All these scenarios cut high school staff, cut administrators. One thing we're not asking to do is to cut programs because we know those things are important for the education of students. So when we're talking about it's not anyone's fault, it's not anyone's fault that we were using money that was in the bank that is gone, right? We did that every year from our towns. I don't understand how Warren Elementary has more money in the bank than West Brookfield. I'm assuming it has to do with the tax-based structure and how much the town's people are taxed, how many businesses are taxed, and if that tax rate hasn't gone up in many, many years, or those assessments, which I believe is what happened to me, because all of a sudden I got a very big bill a few years ago, that our assessments for our property went up. If those things don't go up in the town, if towns don't support their taxes being raised or their assessments being raised, then your town will not have more money. And the costs go up. Just like everything in our own home, our costs go up every year. And everything that has gone up as a cost in your home has gone up in this school, but even by higher percentages. And I just wanted to put that school choice number and enrollment number and how much the difference in that finances is. So even though we're getting 60 new kids from school choice in Warren Elementary, we still have a gap of more than $7,000 per student to educate that student. And then we do see we have 2 classrooms filled, but if there's only 20 kids in the classroom that are residents, where are our residents? Have they moved out? Do we really just not have the kids there? Or are they in other districts? Are they going outside for their choices? Because we didn't talk about that number. And I can tell you that there are more students gone from West Brookfield, the town of West Brookfield, going to other schools than there are Warren students.
Angela with you again, West Brookfield Elementary School. So I just wanted to mention, have you guys looked at and thought about the potential loss of school choice families and parents and students coming to the district, and for those students, families who are coming from out of town, from Ware or Southbridge or North Brookfield, and they're going to have siblings, like they're already coming out of town and providing their own transportation. They're not going to want to drive their children to 2 different schools. Have we looked at what those reduction in numbers are going to be? I know it's not a lot of money that we're going to lose because it's only $5,000 a kid, but those numbers, I mean, I'm talking to someone in the audience right now who's like, well, my 2 grandkids aren't going to come one in one school and one in another, they're coming from out of town. I know that same scenario can happen with a lot of families.
So yeah, I talked about that. Unfortunately, we don't know what that looks like, and quite honestly, more and less of the students potentially finish school choice out as well. So it's something that we're definitely mindful of and know, and are trying to understand about this.
Yeah.
This is an evolving situation, obviously, so we've done 3 different presentations, and each one has been a little bit different. We are constantly going through this, going through it, understanding where can we cut, what can we do a little different here, or whatever, school choice or inclusion and stuff.
Yeah, and I also know, I mean, our West Brookfield is very close to Brookfield with Willowbrook Academy, Montessori school, that's right in Brookfield. You know, it's a great little school for people who, want to utilize that type of program. I do have people coming back every year. You know, I have a family that just contacted me and said, all right, I have a kindergartner in first grade there, they're coming to you next year for first and second, what am I gonna do to enroll them? And that happens regularly. I know that's a great little stepping stone for a lot of families. They like to utilize and get their children into that school a little earlier. Lots of playtime, great for kids with, a lot of energy. But those people do eventually kind of come back to us, whether it's at the elementary level or all the way up at the high school. But we do get a lot of kids that come back from those outside placements too.
Hi, Tana Rossi, a parent of a sophomore here and teacher at West Brookfield for, this is my 21st year. Thank you. I just want to start by saying, I've worked in Southbridge before I came here. I've grown up in Southbridge. West Brookfield has been one of the most welcoming communities. This is my home. I spend more time here than I do in my house. These kids are my kids.
Yes.
This is so important to keep that what makes us special. And I know that Mr. Duff is pointing out all the positives to closing the school and having all of those grade levels together and being able to share with those teachers. And I would love to be able to communicate more with the second grade teachers over in Warren. I love that team. Of course, I don't know if I'll be in second grade next year, because once we do this, I can end up just about anywhere. The fact is, it's not going to be all hunky-dory if we do that. It's going to change a lot of things, including how many kids are in all of those specials and trying to reconfigure all kinds of schedules. And already this year, we've got this new schedule where every 4 days it changes, and that's hard enough for these kids to figure out. I had kids walking up to me this morning and said, are you going to lose your job? Are we going to have to leave our school? The kids are so worried about what's going on. And I know that's not because people are, whispering to the kids what's going on. We live in this world of technology now where all calls come through. I was in my car listening to it, so the kids hear these messages. They know what's going on. They're worried. Please, ask your kids, talk to them, because it breaks my heart to see their little faces. They're so scared right now that they're going to have to go to a different school, they're going to lose their friends, what's going to happen. So I don't want them to get lost in the shuffle at all. I do have some questions. I know in the presentation that the teachers got the other day, there were some slides that showed some possible areas of what kind of things are going to change. And I wish we could have more information for that to show exactly where are these cuts going to be. Are we cutting teachers? Are we cutting paras? Are we cutting administration? I'm sorry, but our administration is very heavy. We have a lot of people in administration that are making some big bucks, especially compared to your teachers and your paras. Okay, and they have no interaction with these students whatsoever. And I see the look that you're giving me, and I can give you names if you want me to, because it's the truth. And I'm sure there are plenty of people sitting here that could tell you what I'm talking about. I don't know. There may be repercussions because I'm opening my mouth and I have no filter, but hey, I have to speak up for what I believe in. This is my home. This is my family. These children are mine. I've watched some of them grow up, get married, and have children, and I cannot, it breaks my heart to think of any of what makes West Brookfield and Warren so special being destroyed over money.
Jessica Price, parent of 3 kids, 1 in Quaboag and 2 at West Brookfield. My question is, it looks pretty clear from the numbers that West Brookfield needs the 2.5% override. But is there a chance that we past that, and it's still not enough money to keep the schools open.
Yes.
Thank you, that's all, that's what I wanted to know.
So wait, so even if they do the override, there's still not enough money to keep them both open?
So what I would,
They're planning to use the override for that.
we do have a member of the select board and advisory board here that can answer that question.
Can everybody hear me okay? So I'm Cammie Lambert. I'm one of the select board members in West Brookfield. And previously to that, I was the finance director here at the school district. So it's all familiar to me. I've also been on the advisory committee. The select board voted to put the Proposition 2.5 ballot up at our May election. That was the information we had before the school had contacted us and told us that that was one of the situations of what the numbers. What we had put in the Proposition 2.5 override was what we needed for the town and the school side, knowing that the school number would go up a certain amount that we had estimated, because we didn't have a number from the school at all yet. So when that override goes through, the number that's currently on it will not be sufficient to maintain the level service budget that the school needs for our West Brookfield's assessment. Okay? But that being said, we still need the override for the entire town to keep it going. It's not to say we don't need it because the school would just be closing. There's school operations, and the school would still need money to maintain whichever school the kids are going into. Okay?
I'm Tyler. I have one student currently over at Warren, and multiple family members have worked at the school for a long time. It was just a thought on the way here. I don't know about what about just splitting the district, let each town fend for themselves, have their own schools. That's my only thing. Is that something that could be looked at?
I'll answer that real quick. The difficulty with splitting and having towns fend for their own elementary schools is, if you look at your transportation number, if you look at $1.2 million in transportation, and you get 85% reimbursement for that, that means you're getting 85% of that will make it even more easy. $1 million, the town would use the $850,000 that they get reimbursed for to offset the assessment. So the whole point of regionalizing, and the biggest point for the state when it came to regionalization, was transportation was killing districts. And so the state said, if you're willing to work together, then we're willing to reimburse you your transportation at a certain amount. We've been lucky that it's been around 85%. There were years that it was at 70. They said 100% last year. They say that every year, but it never comes in that way. So splitting them would actually cost you more in transportation.
So we wouldn't get the reimbursement?
You want to get the reimbursement if you're a standalone community. Sarah?
Sarah Tutro. I am a resident of Warren, and I have some children in the district. I was curious, what is the actual number of FTEs that would be reduced if we closed West Brookfield Elementary School, or even with option 2?
It would depend on the budget that was approved. It would be a significant amount.
And that's across the district at the
Across the
middle high school
district,
and-
high school, middle school, elementary buildings.
Okay. My next question, insurance. What is the percent of the increase, do we know?
11.18. Yes.
Active insurance is 11.18, retirees is 18.
And will we be covering GLP-1s for the educators? Is that part of the insurance? I
That
know a
is
lot
part
of
of the-
districts are talking about
part of
that.
the insurance.
Maya, who is our carrier, has decided effective 7/1, they will not carry and will also not provide a life.
Thank you. And then I have 2 more questions. Well, I have a statement first. So about 8-ish years ago, I actually was sitting in an auditorium here listening to a very similar conversation. So this is nothing new. It is disappointing that we're getting it just as all of the budget deadlines are coming in. This isn't a surprise, and this is something that we maybe strategically should have been thinking about and inviting people in for conversation sooner. That being said, if we close West Brookfield Elementary School and we move everybody to Warren, how will we address the condition of South Street? Have we had any conversations of that? Because you're going to increase the traffic tremendously with additional buses, additional parent pickup, and the road right now is not in good condition.
So So I think that would be a conversation that would be had at the town level. Have I had that conversation with the highway department or the finance board or the select board yet? I have not. I thought this conversation was, that'll be something that we have a conversation about.
As I dodge potholes on the way, I think I'm asking today. And then the final, we are a district that receives rural aid. A few years, I don't know the number of years ago, but a few years ago, the Massachusetts created the Student Opportunity Act. And that focused more on urban districts and increasing their funding. In response to districts like us, they started rural aid. We received that. This year, they're not planning on fully funding it. An important action step for everybody in this room would be to email, call your state representatives, your state senators. You can also visit ruralschools.ma.org, and there's information that you can get about rural aid, but that's a really important action step that we could all take tonight.
Thank you, Sarah. That's a great point. Senator Goby, who used to be one of our senators that represented our district, is actually the head of rural aid now, and we do have a meeting with her on April 13th to talk about rural aid as well. So that's a great point. The more letters we send, the better off we're going to be. Thank you, Sarah.
Hello, my name is Taylor. I have something very short. That's why I'm here. So I just want to say that it seemed to me that in the presentation tonight that the first budget or plan was almost presented as already a lost cause. So my two questions are, what's the likelihood that we do option one even at all? And question two is, what can we, the town and the people, do ourselves?
So I can tell you option one is going to be a very difficult option. We cut $700,000 out of option one already, and I can tell you that it was painful. To think that we can reduce it more, and I'm going to speak candidly, if we can reduce it more than that without doing a reconfiguration or a closing, is going to be very difficult to do. From a budgetary perspective, and I'm just being transparent. What can we do? Like Sarah said, like I said, reach out to Donnie Bertham, reach out to Peter Durant, reach out to Todd Smoller, reach out to Jake Oliveira. We're in Washington, D.C. This week with 8th grade and 9th grade, and I saw Richard Neal there. I had a conversation with Richard Neal. I said, this is a very serious problem. And I want to be very clear, that's not just this district. If you look across, there's 351 communities in Massachusetts. I think 57 of them are going for overrides. Lots of districts and lots of towns, unfortunately, are facing the same problems that we are. This is our district, so, I mean, I care about the other 56, but this is our district. And the best thing you can do is to reach out to your state representatives. The House budget is not in yet, so the governor's budget comes out, and then it goes to the House. The House budget usually increases in a very small increment. It's not much. Last year it was like $100,000, which is $100,000, but in the big picture, it's not a ton. And then the Senate sometimes will increase it. Last year they decreased it a little bit. But usually we're going to get just a little more funding, but typically it's not much. But Sarah talked about rural aid. That's huge. You know, anything that we can do to reach out to our state representatives. Trust me, I'm on the phone with them once a week advocating for our kids and for our communities.
Hi, I'm Shannon Tebow, West Brookfield resident. My daughter is here at the preschool. Also, shameless plug, I'm running for state senate because of issues like this. We are not the only town, so lots of great questions. So I'm going back to hold harmless. And if you could better explain to everybody what that is, and there are so many that are in hold harmless right now.
So hold harmless means that as our foundation enrollment is declining, we are not, our chapter 78 is not decreased because of that. So we stay at a relatively stable level with minimal increase.
Thank you. I know that was for a lot of people didn't know.
Thank you, and good luck.
Thank you.
Just a quick time check.
And childcare, that's right up there.
Hi, my name is Victoria. I came up through the West Brookfield school system, went to Quaboag. I'm now a Warren resident with 2 little ones in that school. So obviously we're talking a lot about the budget, but one thing that I think I would personally like to know is if combining the schools was to go forward, what are some of the benefits? What are some of the things that our kids would get back? Is library on the table? Are there additional services that might be supplemented in the wake of unfortunate cuts elsewhere?
Those are great questions. So actually, the Director of Finance, Gonzalez, was talking about library today. And we know that unfortunately, the library is one of those areas where when you start to look at budgets and you have to make cuts, that was one of the areas that we had to make a cut last year. And it was a painful one, but it was one that was necessary. When we look at combining schools, the real part of the appetite is that collaboration with teachers, having kids together that are within the same school district. But a big piece of it is Title I funding going directly to the elementary buildings, which means that you can hire Title I interventionists. You can potentially hire instructional coaches, which are things that help our teachers in the classroom. So the way that we utilize our Title I funding, which is one of the biggest pieces, I think you asked the question, I apologize. One of the biggest pieces is being able to use those funds. The other piece that, once again, the biggest thing that we're looking at in this whole piece, or the school committee is looking at this whole piece, is what does sustainability look like? And if we're able to get to a point where above minimum contribution, I can tell you 2 years ago we added 4 kindergarten paraprofessionals to our school. We had never had, well, we had kindergarten paraprofessionals long ago. That was one position or 4 paraprofessionals, but our district was one of the only districts that did not have kindergarten paraprofessionals. That was a priority. So when we get to a point where we have a budget that is sustainable, then when you go back and you start asking for above minimum contributions, you can start looking for above minimum contributions to support the areas that need support, like kindergarten paraprofessionals. So I just think long-term, Title I in one particular school helps with those types of interventions. And if we get to a point where we can start building some staff back up, I think that would be super helpful. Because our staff, Ms. Rossi, 21 years, congratulations, super happy. Our staff work tremendously hard to fill the voids that, if we could fill those voids in a different way, then I think that it would only help education.
Dear Brunel, I have grew up in Warren since I was 3. I raised 2 kids here. I have a high schooler who's a junior who Steve Duff helped us quite a lot with him as he was growing up at Warren, and I can tell you that he was there during those larger sizes. I was talking to my son about it tonight. I was like, they're going to increase the sizes. It's going to be hard on your younger brother. And he went, I managed. I'm doing great. So looking at it in that perspective, I came here today going, God, we can't merge them. Like, it's just going to be too much on the kids. But my high schooler is the one that pointed out, I'm okay. They'll make it work. Mr. Duff helped me. And no, we haven't always seen eye to eye as a district. We've had our moments. Steve and I have had our moments. But in the end, I know they're going to make the right choices for our kids. I have, at times, considered school choicing out of Warren when we've had our battles. And in the end, we come back, we figure it out, we make it work. So for those of you that are new or have younger kids, we've had the battles, we've had the fights, but if we work together and try to come to a solution, it will get better. My 17-year-old is at Pathfinder. Yes, he's school choicing out. I'm one of those moms. But it has been amazing for him. And when I went to Steve and told him, it didn't matter that it was going to hit the district. He promoted it. He wrote him a letter of recommendation, and he, for that last year he was here, was like, keep it up. You gotta build your resume up for when you go. He pushed. So while it might not have been good for the district as a whole, he was looking at each individual kid. So while you're looking at it as, how is my kid going to be affected? Please think that these 12 members and Mr. Duff have some really serious decisions to make, and it sucks, but they're trying. And I'll be the first to say that I've given him battles over stuff like this before, and I probably will this year again. I will fight to the end for my kids, and I know we all will, but sometimes we have to give a little to get a little. So if my kid goes to a classroom of 28, he's he's one of the grades that will have the largest classroom sizes. I'll be the first one there to say, what do you need and how can I help? Because he needs more supports than most of your kids. My kid is a kid that struggles. And I'm at the school on a regular basis right now, helping him and helping them. But at the end of the day, we all have to do it. So please, when you're thinking about it over the next few weeks and we have to make all these decisions, at the end of the day, they have to go home every night and think about what their decisions are. We go home and take care of our kids, they all have to deal with it. Sarah did it for years. She knows what they're fighting. It's not easy. I wouldn't want to be them.
My name is Selena. I have a kindergartner and a second grader at Westbrookfield Elementary. Fantastic school, just want to say. My second grader's been in 2 different other districts, and this is the first year that she's been able to be in a normal classroom setting and get all fantastic grades thanks to her teacher. So I just have a couple questions, because this year we will be buying a house, and kind of this decision determines whether we buy a house in the district or not. I would like not to move my kids, but it is what it is. My daughter has an IEP, and my kindergartner is about to be on one. So I guess my first question is kind of about IEPs. She's doing fantastic this year, but with those classroom ratios to teacher, are they still going to be able to get the same, I guess, not attention, but I guess I don't know what I'm trying to say, but be as successful, the same support, especially with a kindergartner that's about to be on an IEP as well. I guess I just want to make sure they're just going to still get those same supports with those ratios. You already thought about the special ed department, like are they going to, I know we're going to have to make cuts. What about the special ed department? Have you guys put thought into that?
We have looked at everything. And once again, I would say that the interesting part about a model where you have combined grade levels, whether it's K through 3 in West Brookfield, 4 through 6 in Warren, is right now the way that the population is spread out. So for example, in West Brookfield, K through 2 or KM1? K through 2 is one special education teacher. With the model that we're looking for, you'll have a special education teacher at every grade level. So you have one teacher assigned to a grade level versus one teacher assigned to 3 grade levels, based upon it. So I would, and once again, the numbers are going to increase. So I don't want to make it look any different than it really is. But having one special education teacher working with one grade level on the same curriculum that those teachers are working on, and obviously they'll modify and adapt it. That's what special education does, and work on different skill sets. I almost think it's a better model because that teacher is assigned to that specific grade level, not across 3 grade levels.
All right, and then I had 2 more questions.
Yep.
I know it was brought up about school choice parents having to be in 2 places at once, but also in-district parents with the model too, I believe. Like my kindergartner and my second grader are both parent pickup. I physically am the only person that gets them on my days, so I physically can't be in 2 places at once. Just to keep that in mind when you make your decision for us parents who are in the district as well as school choice. I can't duplicate myself if we stay in district, but I'm sure other parents have the same question I do, so I figured I'd be able to ask it. And then my third question is about the after-school program and the before-school program. What would that look like? What would staffing look like? Because I know West Brookfield, there's a lot of kids in the before and after-school program to the point where I go in there, I can't even find my daughter. There's so many kids. So what would that look like? Would we still have the same teachers, the same, how would that work?
Yep, so it would be similar to the model that we have now. We've already started some conversations a little bit looking at after-school programming. We also have a 21st century after-school program in Warren that West Brookfield students would be eligible for as well. But we would be looking at utilizing the same staff. Once again, we're not looking at tearing things apart to tear things apart. We're looking at putting things together so that we can continue to financially have some sustainability moving forward. After-school program is so valuable. Before-school programming is so valuable. We have very similar numbers in both buildings. West Brookfield has quite a few of after-school kids. We'd like to model those pieces that we already have in place and work together. I could see our after-school program being huge. I really could. Which I think is great. Kids need something. Parents need that after school, but kids also flourish from having those opportunities.
Plus, like, being a parent of an IEP student who does really good with the same staff. This is like her 3rd district. I was really hoping to keep her in district and not change her staff again on her this year, but I guess it is what it is. I'm only one person. But it would be great to see if that does, God forbid that happens, I hope it doesn't, because I love our school. I would love to see the same staff because, like us IEP parents, those kids don't do good with change, especially my son who's about to be on an IEP. He does not do good with change, so it would be having to start all over next year if we stayed in district. So.
And I would say that you'll probably have the same staff because it's always the same folks that are doing those programs, which is awesome.
I'm short, so I'm going to leave the microphone down. I'm Emily. I have a 1st grader at Warren. I have a 10th grader here at Quaboag. I've been through the program here from preschool all the way to high school. My thing that I've heard a lot of is what the budget's going to be, the softball fields, the soccer fields, all of those things go back to the town for West Brookfield. But what I haven't heard is the school district maintaining the basic maintenance of the building, or does that go back to the town as well? And how much is that going to cost? Because, I mean, I don't want to see this beautiful building that has been erected fall into disarray like so much of what we have around in the area.
Yep. Absolutely. So if a school closes, whether it be Quaboag, Warren, West Brookfield, when the school closes, the lease agreement that we have, we don't pay a lease, but we maintain our property. That lease gets turned over to the town, and it becomes the town's responsibility to care for it.
Is there a budget number, like a minimum number for that, or?
I can tell you that we budget roughly $227,000, roughly $200,000 for maintenance of the building. But we're in it every day. The other piece, the other piece that we're looking at is, and this is a difficult piece for the town of West Brookfield. As we know, for those of you who are in West Brookfield, the doors and windows in West Brookfield are not in terrific shape. So we did apply for an MSBA project, Massachusetts School Business Association, and we were awarded a piece of reimbursement for doors and windows. The problem with the doors and windows project is it's an expensive project. We're looking probably in the neighborhood of $2 million, and West Brookfield would probably be on the hook for $900,000 of that $2 million. The doors and windows do need to get done if we continue to maintain that as an elementary school. We've been in contact with the town administrator, Teresa, and the advisory board. So that project is one that we would have to make a decision to move forward with in the next 3 months. But once again, that's an additional cost on top of what we're doing here, but it's a cost that we would probably need to take on in order to continue to operate that as an elementary.
HVAC needs addressing too.
HVAC as well, yep. So we used green community grants. We used a lot of green community grants to get us to the point where we can do the HVAC. They make you do the building envelope first. It's through CMRPC. There's stages that we have to go in to address those so that we're eligible for grant funding. We live off grant funding with electric and all other sorts of stuff. We try to be as energy efficient as possible. So sorry.
That's okay. Hi, I'm Madeline. I'm from West Brookfield. I have a 5th grader and a soon someday kindergartner. I wanted to ask, and I guess this is more directed towards Cammie who had stood up. Is there a way for that 2.5% override to be? I'm sorry. Could you speak up just a little bit? Oh, sorry. The microphone was lowered. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. So this is, I guess, more directed towards Cammie, who had talked about the 2.5% override. Is that something that 2.5% override, if it passed, could be reallocated instead to the school? Is that set in stone? Could that be changed, voted on?
So right now, the override that's been proposed was an amount to get us through this year and next year. It also included money for all the town departments, because as it is, if we're putting budgets together, we're looking at what it would look like if we don't get the override, and it's not what voters are going to like, drastically, I can tell you that. And it is not the school number whatsoever. So that's why I said if that budget number passed, it still wouldn't be enough to keep the school open and keep our departments going like they are today. It wouldn't even be enough. Trying to remember the number. I don't think it's enough to even keep just the school portion going.
So is there an avenue that a budget could be created from our town?
So what the process is right now is the select board voted a number to put on the ballot. We had to issue that vote 35 days before our election. So our elections are the first week of May 5th. So we had to vote a number, financially working on that piece of it. And we've got an information session at the elementary school in West Brookfield for our override to explain what's needed there. We have 3 meetings set up. The first one is Wednesday, April 1st at 6:30, which explains the West Brookfield portion of that, which didn't include the school part to begin with, as far as keeping the school open. So that's what we have set. We have to give the town clerk the ballot and the amount 35 days before the election. And then once the outcome of that election with the proposition override, we know that decision, then that budget will go to town meeting. If the override does not pass, they're all going to get reduced. And that's going to be the town meeting budget that's at our June meeting. I just wanted, if you don't mind, if I can just explain a couple things just so people understand. When we talk about the ability to pay that we've come up with for the towns, for what they have to pay for their assessment, that's determined by the state. That is not something that's determined by the town nor the school district. That's determined by the state, and it's based on 2 factors. People's income levels, based off your tax returns, based on your zip code, believe it or not, and your property values. Those are the 2 factors that go into a community's ability to pay. And that's why one school district, one town is different than the other. It's not a matter of we can afford more. The problem with that is we only have so much taxing ability based on the property values in town. That's the only thing we can tax. You can make as much money as you want. We can't tax it in town. So the only thing we are able to do is ask voters, will they vote for an override? It's the only way we can increase it. Just so you know, our tax levy limit, so what we can tax, what it goes up by from one year to the next, is about $260,000 a year. That's all the new revenue the town gets on that side of it. Our minimum local contribution was $302,000 to the school district, and our vocational tuition bill next year just went up $200,000. Those are 2 things, and we're already $250,000 short. So that's what we're facing on that side. We've gone to town meetings the last 5 or 6 years and said, we've been using our free cash to sort of balance our budget, but we're running out. We can't keep doing this. It's going to run short. This is the year. It's not there. So that's really creating it.
So it sounds like you're saying there's no way the town is going to be able to enhance the budget to cover what we need to keep the school open.
I just did quick notes, and please don't hold me to the number, but I'm going to do the best I can here. We were looking for the first year for the town side, and knowing what we needed for the school, we thought to begin with, was $863,000. We'd need another $500,000 to give the school to keep the doors open here the way they are. And our vocational bills, another. We need $1.6 million override for 1 year. The next year we have the same problem because their bills are going to go up again. Our town revenues aren't going to go up again, so we need enough. That's what we need to try to figure out, that combination. It's not for the lack of trying from a number of very smart people. It's the reality of what we've come across is really what's happening. So to answer your question, we can't, with that May election number, there really isn't anything that can be done now. Town meeting is not going to be able to vote a higher number because there's no funding source for it without an override that approves a higher number. That's really what it comes down to. And again, I want to be clear, that's for 1 year.
And when does the school committee vote?
So the school committee will vote a budget on March 30th. The way that next week, but the way that the school committee, the way that regional school budgets work is once you vote a budget, it can't go up, it can only come down. So I can't speak for the committee itself, but typically they wouldn't go with the lowest budget possible to start, but there are going to be some versions that are going to come out. Once again, the hard part is trying to make up that deficit because it's difficult. It is.
Hi, Devin, Warren resident, 2 kids at Warren Elementary. Everybody's been talking about K through 6, but there's one small group of kids at West Brookfield Elementary that no one said anything about, and that's our STARS program. And I have a few friends that, have little ones in that program. Are you going to move them over too? Is that the plan, or like if you guys were to close West Brookfield? Because again,
Yep.
I know it's such a small group of kids, but
Very
they're a good
important
group of kids.
of
They need it too.
Absolutely. Yes, so we have 2 SOARS classrooms. It's we call them our little stores and our big stores. Those 2 classrooms would come over to Warren. We have 2 STARS classrooms. It's the little stars and the big stars. Those would stay in Warren. And then we also have ILM, instructional learning model, that would stay in Warren. Everybody would come together.
Everyone would come.
Yep.
Okay, hi, I'm Jody. I have a child in elementary, currently in this district. So I have a question, just to make sure I'm understanding correctly. So when we school choice a child, we pay out, correct? Was it like $400,000 for a kid to pay out for the school choice? For the downtown?
If you school choice into our district?
No, out.
If you
If
school
you go
choice
out.
out, we pay $5,000 to the district that the student gets school choice to.
Okay, so if it was 4,000, it's like 6.5 kids, at that point it's 2 million, something like that?
Oh, are you talking about out-of-district placement or
Yes.
school choice?
Sorry, my apologies.
It's
Out
okay.
of district placement.
Out-of-district placements can range anywhere from 100 to 400 and 500,000.
So 100,000, that's 20 kids,
That's one student
one student for
that gets an
$100,000.
out-of-district placement, which means that we can't service that student in our district. That could range anywhere from 100
Which
to
would be if
500.
the school closes and they have to transport and they don't have the same school as they are currently and it's providing the same resources that they are. Because you guys changed the programs to match so that when we went to the 7th grade, a new ELA and a new math program, but our kids are in K through 6 are still kind of needing extra support. So those kids, even if they don't need extra supports, it's $100,000 a child starting cap, right? Times 20 kids, how much is that?
$2 million, but
Okay,
I don't
wait,
understand the
so there's
question.
260 kids. That's dangerous though, like doing the reconstruction would be far better.
Are you talking school choice?
Yes.
So it's
Yeah,
different.
out of
Out of placement is students that we can't service.
Yeah, like special education students that we can't service within our
And
district.
school choice is different, that's far less money.
Like a child on a ventilator, like somebody who is a medically fragile, somebody that we cannot support in our building.
Correct. So
It wouldn't be normal special needs children or any of that.
Yeah.
So when we school choice in,
We're making
it's
money.
because their people or their district can't support them,
No,
right?
it's because they like the education that's going on within our district.
Yeah.
So for example, we have school choice kids from Southbridge, Ware, North Brookfield. All those students have a choice to stay in their district, or the law says that you can school choice into another district and get your education in another district. If we merge the schools, we're not sending kids out. Our kids stay with us.
Okay, so
Yep.
they won't, so if we merge the schools, we'll still keep our kids
Yep.
and our finances, and we won't have to pay out.
Correct.
So we'll be able to sustain them even though we're switching schools, which is whatever. I got a teenager, they're just as rough. So, but we'll be able to keep our staffing ratio currently.
Our staffing ratio would be reduced. That is why we would, that's how you make a budget work. But the class ratios would stay in the ballpark. I'm not saying it's not a variance, because it is.
I thought it was like 21 to 28 kids.
Yep, that's
So,
it.
Yeah, so there's like anywhere from what's the lowest class? 15?
So I'll give you a prime example. If there's 31 kids in Warren, 31 kids in West Brookfield, you need 2 teachers in each building for 31 kids.
Okay.
If you bring those 31 kids together, you have 62 kids.
Mhm.
You can have 3 teachers with 21 kids in the classroom.
So,
Yep.
same kids, less teachers if we reconstruct, but not closing the West Brookfield school, still utilizing it.
We wouldn't utilize West Brookfield and close the building, if that's what the school committee chooses.
So no matter, so it's, but the 3 options that were in the email were save it and stay as it is.
Yep, reconfigure.
Reconfigure,
Yep.
which
K
is,
through 3 in West Brookfield, 4 through 6 in Warren.
so we would keep that West Brookfield school for K through 3.
Yes,
And then they would move 4 through 6 to,
Warren.
okay.
Yep,
And then the other one is close all in general.
Yep.
And then the kids would ship over to Warren.
correct.
But we accrue expenditures with them shipping because we're losing staff and more behavioral issues might include if you have a higher class rate.
No,
Behaviors don't go up if you have less attention and less focus on you.
Behaviors go up no matter where we go.
But
you may have additional support.
when they're coming from a smaller class size and they have more supports.
Yep.
Because there is a significant support in West Brookfield. Yeah, but I mean, as far as West Brookfield goes, there's a good support system in place without Title I.
Yep,
So there's no Title I, it's the town supporting, like, a significant amount of it.
yep.
So if we want to keep our town in general, like, the 2.5, that's, like, we won't even know if that keeps our school open. So as residents, if we close our school, right? And then we should have our kids go over to a Title I school, which is already receiving the supports. Do we have to, we're in the same district, so we don't have to pay, but say we run into, like, moving our SOAR kids, moving our special educations to an already different setting, because they have their own structure, they're their own town. And our town is already supporting that. So if we go and our kids go school choice somewhere else, because we no longer have the class size we want, or the familiar teachers, or the setup they're accustomed to, and we find that we, as West Brookfield, can't go to Warren, because it's their town, and send in our votes, because it's their school and their school system. Where does our vote come into play? I know Board of Selectmen is fantastic, but where are we? Where are we allowed to put in our say in our kids' education elsewhere? That's why we school choice. We want that. We want that for them. That's why I moved houses and didn't get married, so I could have my kid in a good system. You met my daughter. She's redheaded. That comes a DNA structure and a half, okay? She's a special kind of something and tap dances on nerves that you didn't know you had. But I agree with the lady before. You did fantastic. Those resources, I'm glad that you're superintendent. Miss Provost before. No, sorry, not Miss Provost. Miss Lily and Miss Provost know Taryn.
Yep.
He's a delicate little marshmallow that's 150 pounds of, buddy, we can't wrestle because those kids are half your size. But what do we do as West Brookfield residents, sending our children out? How are we going to have a say in a town that's already established?
So specifically around special education, there are laws that need to be in place to service students. The structure of the SOARS program, I'll talk just SOARS because you were talking about specialized program, that structure doesn't change. It's still a requirement for us to service all of our students, and our special education students are one of our top priorities, as is every other student. You would keep the same level of staffing for those specialized programs.
But for those kids, special ed, that are not SOARS, for example, the same level of staffing, but is it the same across the board for their education as far as, I know the curriculum is the same, but Ignite, will they have Ignite?
Yes.
Ignite is based on how many seats the state will give you.
But when you have a new school with more kids, do all those Ignite kids get to stay?
Right now, we have Ignite district-wide.
What the state says or
Yeah.
where they go, it's based on their DIBELS assessment. So every time we do DIBELS, which is 3 times a year, which is their ELA, literacy, foundational skill assessment, the state looks at that number and tells us how many kids and which kids can have those seats. That's what that's based on.
So, but they don't have a cap. They don't have a cap like, oh, you're allowed 20
We
kids.
have 40 seats
So there's a
based
cap.
on what the state says we could have.
So there's a cap at 40 seats. And you already have,
There are 20 seats for Warren students and 20 seats for West Brookfield students.
but when we take away West Brookfield, if it's gone, do we still get those
There's
20
still
seats?
West Brookfield, they still reside in West Brookfield. There are still West Brookfield students.
Okay.
I cannot say that there will be 20 seats for West Brookfield next year. It's not even in the state budget yet that that program will be funded.
Okay.
We don't fund that, the state funds that.
Okay. And then as far as, we've already said that the vote is coming up before we can even find out what we're gonna do with the schools.
So the initial vote is March 30th.
It's March 30th?
Yep, and typically it's a higher budget that gets voted in.
Yep.
And then we work with our towns to figure out, and we get a couple more numbers in from the state, because that changes with
Because we're
House
looking,
budget.
we're looking at right now, we've been said so different many ways that it doesn't look like West Brookfield is gonna be by itself and Warren stay with their stuff. So we're gonna either reconstruct or we're gonna close. So with those two, that was options that we've been, essentially, we're gonna cross off that one that we've been told so many ways.
That would be up to the school
And
committee.
how many committees, how many school committee members do you have?
12.
Okay, and you said not, how many, you said 4?
4 for, if you were to close West Brookfield,
Okay.
then 4 members from the board, the school committee, from West Brookfield would have to vote in favor of it, and 9 total members of the school committee would have to vote in favor of it, including those 4.
And then our taxes will go up.
Excuse me, it's been over 3 minutes.
Has it?
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
Sorry, thank you.
Sorry.
So, no, this goes to Steve and also to finance. And Steve, if you could answer it both ways, as superintendent, but also as a parent who lives in the district, so both ways. What are your recommendations for going forward? Would you merge, or would you do the separation? Where do you stand? Both parent and superintendent. Yeah, I know, I'm cornering you, but legitimately, like, you're looking at everything that we can't see. What would you do?
What I will say is that I ran a special education collaborative and I worked in it for over 20 years. I moved to Warren because of the Quaboag Regional School District. I have 3 daughters that went through Warren Elementary and came up to Quaboag. Would my daughters have been as successful at West Brookfield Elementary? I can tell you they absolutely would have. The hard part, and this isn't my decision and it's not my recommendation. My job has been delivered to me from the school committee behind me saying we have a financial difficulty. We've met with our administrators. In order to get to the numbers that we need to get to, these are the solutions that we came up with. I can tell you that we've turned this budget inside and out for the last 3 months. We've looked at energy efficiencies, HVAC, we're doing a big HVAC project up there now, it's $350,000, which is grant funding. We've looked at every single way that we can save this district money at the end of the day because it reflects the assessments and what we have to ask for from our towns. Do I have the answer to this? I don't have the answer to this. I can just tell you. Am I dancing around this enough? No, but what I can tell you is that it's a very difficult decision that our towns or our school committee is going to have to make. Do I go to West Brookfield Elementary School once, twice, 3 times a week? I do. Do I go to Warren Elementary School once, twice, 3 times a week? I do. Can I tell you that kids are kids and we have spectacular teachers? I can. Do I see our kids come together in 7th grade and do spectacular? I do. Do I see our kids playing sports in 3rd and 4th grade, running around out on the court from Warren and West Brookfield and having a great time together? I do. I don't envy the school committee because that's going to have to be your decision. But I can tell you that under the current structure, it is going to be very difficult to maintain what we're doing because there's just, the money's not there. Like I said, I've been here for 15 years and I've sat in conversations about closing schools and coming up with 3 different scenarios. And I can tell you, we did 3 different scenarios 10 years ago to do 3 different scenarios. We are not doing 3 different scenarios today to do 3 different scenarios. We're doing 3 different scenarios because we have to do 3 different scenarios because the decision that is coming down the road is a very difficult one. But I want to see our district stay intact as much as we can. I want to see our kids continue to thrive to the best that they can. And I think that we can do that honestly, I think we can do that in any model. The hardest part is closing the school because it does impact communities and it does impact kids. There's no doubt about that. But if you look around and you look at some of the towns around us, and I use Quaboag as an example, they had to close 2 elementary buildings. That's not easy. It's not easy at all. But unfortunately, the state is not funding the way that they need to fund. And if they did, this would be a moot point. Right? We have everything for every one of our kids. I hate cutting, and we cut so much. It breaks my heart to have to move people on because our kids deserve better. But our staff has stepped up and filled voids. It's a small community. It's a family community. We know every kid in our district. That's something that you don't get in other districts. In other districts, you can be a number. Right? We have kids that come back to our district because in other districts, they didn't feel as if they were as valued as they are in Quaboag, or in Warren, West Brookfield, the middle of the high school. That's a credit to all the teachers that are in the classroom and all the administrators. We take great care of our kids. So the long answer is they have a difficult decision to make, but it's just hard. It's a financial one, which is hard when it comes to these things. But we want to see sustainability for our district and our kids.
Which one gives the least impact to a kid in the classroom? Which one would give them the least impact overall?
You're not beating me into that one, dear. I think if we have to go between version 1 and version 2, if we have to make more cuts in version 1, it would be very detrimental to our students.
So merging them would give them
I would
more
say
stability.
version 1, version 2,
I'm
or
trying
3.
to remember which one's version 1.
Yeah,
which
one
one's
is like
version 2.
1.7 million above, but it's 2.65 with $700,000 worth of cuts.
Version 2 was reconfigured.
Reconfiguring. The only problem, once again, the only problem with reconfiguring, and once again, any of them have problems, is the cost of transportation up front, and I don't know if it's putting a Band-Aid on a problem. I don't know that answer. We put Band-Aids on problems for a long time.
Question about transportation. So can we look at other buses?
I'm going to come back to you in 1 second, okay? I apologize.
I'm Jonathan. I have 2 students who go to West Brookfield Elementary and one that goes to the Warren High School. I have a question about the SOARS program in regards to reconstructing. If K through 3 is in West Brookfield and you have 4 through 6 in Warren, will that split up the SOARS and STARS program?
It will.
Okay.
And just out of complete transparency, the reason it splits it up is because, thank you, Dr. Esposito, and our teachers, K through 3 SOARS and 4 through 6 SOARS get included in other classes. So if I kept K through 6 SOARS at West Brookfield Elementary School, but the 4 through 6 grades were in Warren Elementary, then the students in the 4 through 6 SOARS program wouldn't have access to some of the inclusion opportunities that they have
Okay,
now.
that's a valid point.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, one thing, everyone, for coming out this evening. We do appreciate your time, and thank you for coming out as well. Thank you, everybody.
Yes.